I'm going to ask you to recall an uncomfortable feeling that I tend to get because I work in a school, that feeling in the pit of your stomach when you were told by your teacher or your professor that you were going to have a pop quiz or maybe a surprise test. As I said, I live at school, and so I do have that feeling vicariously through some of my students. And actually, I wasn't a student too long ago. It was only 8 years ago that I actually had those panic attacks in seminary. But that sinking stomach feeling was usually followed for me by the thought, well, why didn't I study more? But on the other hand, maybe you have also had the experience of your teacher saying, it's an open book test. All the answers are right there. You'll have all the information you need. Sometimes that can bring on more panic, but for me, it was a relief. I really just had to calm down and pay attention to what was right there in front of me. And when Jesus tells the parable of the farmer planting the seeds, his listeners know right at the outset that the events of the story may be compared to the kingdom of heaven. So this tip-off may prompt them to listen carefully as Jesus offers an explanation. But even this information is not enough for his bewildered disciples, who wait until the crowd disperses, and they ask for extra help. They stay after, asking their teacher, so explain to us this parable of the weeds of the field. It seems so simple to ask for extra help. And it is one of the most accessible ways toward learning, at least in our system. But I've found that it's incredibly hard to get students into the habit of asking for it. I don't know if it's because they feel embarrassed because they don't know, probably. It's hard to convince students that a good first step to learning is realizing just how much we have to learn and just how much we don't know, and that that's actually really exciting. That's really kind of an open opportunity. There is a saying attributed to the Buddha, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. The disciples recognized their need, and they wanted to learn. They turned to their teacher for explanation and illumination. And so they weren't ashamed, but instead their hearts were opened, and they were ready to receive the wisdom of Jesus. Along with our students, we would be wise to follow the disciples' example. Wouldn't we all be better off if we would not try to pretend that we understand everything or that everything in our lives is just fine, thank you very much? What would happen in our lives if we had the vulnerability to say, I need some help. I'm not able to do this on my own? Chances are someone or several someones will step up and support and guide us. Life is not meant to be a test that we struggle through without any help, that kind of suck-it-up attitude. Jesus offers a grace-filled, open-book test when he responds to his disciples with insight and instruction. He provides them encouragement and wisdom that will help them as they follow and serve him. It's as if the test they are preparing for is actually their discipleship. And Jesus, as their teacher, supplies them the answers they need to be faithful and to be effective. It's often easier to be the one who offers help than the one who receives it. There are times, however, when we need to follow the disciples' example and ask for assistance. Jesus encourages this attitude of seeking for wisdom by reminding them, let anyone with ears listen. He always wants to teach us. We just have to be ready to learn. We learn in the parable of the very real dangers that exist in the world. The farmer does everything right. He plants good seeds, and he tends his fields, and he empowers his servants to tend to those very same fields. And yet, despite their diligence, an enemy appears and spreads weeds in amongst the wheat stalks. The story reminds us that despite our good intentions and genuine efforts in life, invariably there are setbacks and obstacles that can threaten to ruin even the best plan. Just hearing Jesus acknowledge that there are times when things go wrong is incredibly reassuring. We often place tremendous burden on ourselves by imagining that our actions and our thoughtfulness completely control the events in our own lives. Sometimes we may even want to believe that our faith should protect us from any misfortune and place a value on the quality of our faith through this. But the reality is that there are other forces at work in the world. Sometimes these misfortunes are the result of evil intentions. It's just real. Sometimes bad things simply happen. Forewarned is forearmed, the saying goes. And Jesus' forewarning is that we should just anticipate challenges and interference along our journey, which I think is far more realistic and helpful counsel. He is clear. Things go wrong, and events do not always work in our favor. Sometimes we can point to a concrete cause, and other times we may be completely baffled by the circumstances that have lined up against us. In any case, we can be reassured that a string of unfortunate events in our lives does not indicate that we are separated from the love of God. Misfortune and great need are not outside of the realm of God. God is even especially in those scary and challenging places where we need him the most. And Jesus, as our divine teacher, offers assurance that we never must lose heart. Back to the story, isn't it relatable, the natural impulse of the householder's slaves? They want to immediately get rid of the threat. They want to gather up the weeds in the field and destroy them. And so it comes as a kind of a surprise that their master says, no, wait, hold on. It didn't occur to them that they might destroy good plants while they're pulling out the weeds. The plants, he explains, can look very similar when they're young. The slaves need to wait until the plants mature and really reveal their true characteristics. So through the parable, Jesus is encouraging us to be very careful about making judgments about others. It can be difficult, he teaches, to discern which is the weed and which is the valuable wheat. We wouldn't want to throw away the precious crop in our haste. It is better to allow them both to grow, and then the farmer will make that judgment later on. We are being given a lesson here, a kernel of wisdom about the importance of offering grace with humility to one another. It is not our job to judge one another. We can wait and let God do that. A person who might, to our critical eye, seem to lack stature or value may in fact be someone who is loving and serving God authentically the only way she knows how. Instead of ignoring or being critical of someone, we need to care for all of God's children. We might just be surprised at who turns out to be incredibly valuable. There is an example from nature that can remind us of this lesson. Perhaps you've heard of fool's gold. Fool's gold is actually a mineral called pyrite, and it's bright yellow and can easily mislead us into believing that it's actual gold. And maybe you've seen this in old westerns. someone is given a piece of gold as payment or a reward, and what is the first thing that they do? They bite it. They stick it in their mouth and they bite it. They don't want to simply believe their eyes. They put it to the test. No one can discern its value just by looking at it. Biting down on it reveals the truth. A bite will leave an indentation on real gold, but not on pyrite. So we can't always believe what our eyes tell us. Sometimes we just have to dig deeper, we need to wait, and we need to get more information. We may discover a diamond in the rough, in the guise of someone who outwardly appears to be of little value. Jesus was warning his followers not to be too eager to start weeding. In the process of trying to rid themselves of the weak link, they might hurt those who are trying to love and serve God. The answer to the test is trust the teacher. Jesus knows that an unlikely group of people can come together, united by their faith in God, and together those followers can shine like the sun and spread God's hope and grace wherever they go and wherever they are. Trust the teacher and go forth into the world rejoicing in the power of God's wisdom. Amen.